All right, is anybody there? Good evening. Skip, you are here. Fantastic, mate. And you're the first. All right, is anybody
First to
there?
comment as well. Super fast. There we go. Mute the audio from YouTube. We don't want that.
All righty. I think we only have about 3 people here, but that's okay. This was kind of unannounced, only about half an hour ago. So I didn't give people a lot of notice. This was totally unplanned. I was not planning to do a live stream today, but events have transpired today, which lead me to feel compelled to do a live stream. And as much as I am very sad today, I don't intend this stream to be a sad occasion, a sad event. Today we mark the passing of a musical genius, one half of possibly the greatest rock band that has ever been, in my opinion, Steely Dan. So we are, of course, talking about Walter Becker, who died this morning. He had been in hospital for surgery, I think, earlier in August, and had missed, I think, 2 or 3 Steely Dan shows, which he'd never ever done before. But he was given medical advice to not perform. So I think the last 3 Steely Dan shows have been done basically just with Donald and the rest of the band. And so quite suddenly this morning, Twitter went absolutely berserk with the news that Walter was rumored to be dead. Initially, it was proved, I think, initially to be a hoax. There were some websites saying that actually, no, he's alive and well and everything's fine. But then it transpired probably about 2 hours later that it was in fact true, that he had in fact died. And Donald Fagen, his songwriting partner, other half of Steely Dan, released this moving and emotional statement earlier this afternoon. So that's part of why I'm on. The other part of why I'm on here is just because I like talking to you guys and I like answering your questions, and doing these live streams is great fun. So I really, really enjoy them. So as much as I am quite sad because one of my musical heroes has died, I'm also in a good place. I'm also a happy guy today at the moment. So been a very busy guy in the studio, and busy with weekends. I've been gigging this weekend, so it's been a busy one. So I've been my parents in Fife, and left my kids there for the weekend so that me and my wife could go and attend a wedding. And I've been playing bass at the wedding, and it was great fun. Lots of bass playing and lots and lots of fun. So really good weekend. Really, really thoroughly enjoyed the whole event. So yeah, so I am here basically to say hello to you folks and to answer any of your questions that you might have on recording, mixing, mastering, being a home studio session musician, any songwriting, any of that kind of stuff. That's what I'm here for. So ask away, get typing, because I believe there's probably a good 20-second delay today. So who do we have? We have 8 people in the room so far. We have Beatrice, who is here. Good to see you. Who says, I have no audio right now. Hopefully 5 minutes from home. Got alert on my phone. I'm juicing in a few minutes. Got a mastering question. Okay, great. Hope I can answer that for you. Actually, could you folks confirm that you can hear me and see me well? Make sure you click the little cogwheel at the bottom of the screen, and make sure you've got the resolution set to 720. And just let me know if the audio is any good. I'd appreciate that. So we have Rainer is here. Thank you, mate. Thanks for coming. And Pets Plankner, my good buddy. Good to see you too. And Verk46 is here as well. He says, hello, mates. Skip is here as well. My good buddy, Skip Jones, who has a wonderfully musical mind and is a very loyal friend. And I'm very glad to have him around. So good to see you, Skip. Deirdre says no audio, but Raina says audio is good. So that's good. Deirdre, can I maybe recommend you come out of the stream and then restart YouTube? If some, obviously, Deirdre probably cannot hear me, so maybe somebody type that in the chat. In fact, why don't I do that? Refresh YouTube stream. There we go. So hopefully, you can hear. Great. Great. If you can hear, fantastic. You don't need to refresh your stream. Cool. Audio is finally here. Okay, so it seems that there was a little bit of a delay, you guys getting audio. I don't know why that might have been, because I have it working very, very well here. All right, so let's have your questions. And hopefully some more people will filter through, because I know I have some very reliable people that like to spread news about my live streams. As I say, this was kind of unannounced, so I'm not expecting a huge crowd. But yeah, not expecting a huge crowd at all, but yeah, so I've said Walter Becker edition in the title for this stream, but basically that's just my way to kind of honor the great guitar player, singer, songwriter, bass player, other half of Steely Dan, and possibly responsible for some of the most sarcastic lyrics ever written. And Peter is here as well. That's fantastic. I'm doing a broadcast tonight, unannounced. Okay, you are saying, what does Walter Becker edition mean? Well, you may or may not have seen on Twitter, just as I posted my question, you answered yes. Walter Becker died today, this morning. Twitter went berserk kind of the early hours of this morning. Initially, it was suggested that it might actually be one of those celebrity death hoax things. But then it was actually confirmed by his personal website, his official website confirmed it. And it kind of went from there, and Donald Fagen issued a statement, a public statement this afternoon, which is a beautiful statement. If you go check out Donald Fagen on Facebook, you'll see his beautiful statement is there. And he also posted something personal from himself and his wife as well. Skip says, actually, your video and audio are matching up well. Well, that's good, because that doesn't always happen on my streams, because I'm at the mercy of bandwidth, slow bandwidth. And Raina has written something in German, which I don't understand, because I speak maybe 2 words in German. One is Guten, and the other one is Tag. And that is about the extent of my German. And Bier bitte. I can say that as well. But that's about as far as I go. So my good German friends, I do apologize. But Raina, if you are going to write something, I would appreciate it so that everybody can understand. If we write posts in English, or if you're going to write in German, then perhaps a translation of some kind would be helpful. Not that I am completely kind of against other languages. I'm not. It just helps me and everybody else in the stream, if you could translate into English, please. Because Rainer has written something to Peter, and Pletz Pleitner has responded about speaking German and something about Studio One. That's about all I get from that. Sorry. But yeah, guys, if you're gonna converse in German, then please translate to English. And if it's private conversation, that's kind of okay. But if you're asking a question, then I need that in English, please. All right, anybody got any questions? Raina says, sorry, it was addressed to Peter. And you thank me for my support. Well, you're very welcome, Raina, and I'm very glad to answer any of your questions. Deirdre says, I'm having an issue with a drum loop and hesitation when I try to cut it. It doesn't fix the issue. Any suggestions on what to do? I've tried redoing the whole track and even muting all the tracks. That's a little bit of a tricky one for me to answer here, Deirdre. Could I suggest that you drop me an email and maybe we can hook up on Skype and go through that, because I think I might need to work with you in a little bit more detail on that. So yeah, let me know when is good for you and we can hook up and we can see if we can get that squared away for you. Zenith Music Group UK is here. Fantastic. Thanks, guys, for coming in. And Zenith says, hi, Johnny, great videos. Keep up the excellent work. What models are the keyboards to your right? Thanks, Craig Mack. This one here is the Clavier Nord Stage 88 Revision B circa 2006. And I have updated the OS and the library a couple of times in the 11 years that I've had this. And it works fantastically. It's great. I love it. So that's that one. The one on top here is the Yamaha QS300, circa 1994. It's one of those workstation synth type machines. Has a disk drive at the front here, which doesn't actually work. I had this for about a year. I think some of you are familiar with the story. And I was on the way to a gig with this and another keyboard. And this one, kind of, the door of the van flew open, and this one flew out of the back onto the motorway. And so we had to pull over into the hard shoulder, and I had to run probably the fastest 100 yards I've ever run in my life into oncoming traffic. Cars doing about 70, 80 miles an hour to go and grab the keyboard before it got squashed. The only damage done to it was the disk drive. Disk drive totaled, doesn't work. But the keyboard has been working every single day ever since. So kudos to Yamaha for the robustness of the build of their instruments. Skip says, you got any Steely Dan songs you could give a quick play? Yes, I will certainly come on to that in just a wee minute. Pets Plankner says, sorry, JL, I'm happy that here is somewhere how to speak German because my English is not good. Well, that's okay. I'm happy for you to speak German with other German folks here in the chat. But if you've got something that you want to address to everybody, then English is going to be good. And you know what? Even if it's a little bit ropey English, I am pretty good at figuring out what you mean for the most part. Because some of my piano students and some of my bass students are from Germany, Austria, Sweden, Switzerland, places like that. And some of my clients are from Israel and Palestine and Uganda. And, you know, we have language issues as well. It just takes a little bit of patience. So I'm cool with that. Excuse me. Anybody got any other questions? I seem to recall somebody said they had a mastering question. I don't recall who that is. Ray says audio is fine, video a little choppy. Yes, unfortunately, I'm at the mercy of pretty pathetic internet, to be honest, and there's not a whole lot I can do about that. Sometimes the picture is beautifully clear, and sometimes it isn't, and I do apologize. But unfortunately, this is the only way at the moment that I can do live streaming. So I'm afraid my live streams are not going to be of the same kind of quality as you get with Johnny Gibe or Dave Vignola. I'm afraid, because simply my internet is just not robust enough uploading. But hopefully, maybe in the next 12 to 18 months, that will change. I'm working on that. So until then, we're kind of stuck with what we have, I'm afraid. If the quality is too bad for you, then you're welcome to, to stick around and live with it like I am, or you can go and check out one of the other really great live streams that are around, like Dave's and Johnny's and some of the other ones. I think Khalid Glover, my good friend Khalid Glover, does some excellent live streams as well, so go check his out. Raina says, I'm still working my intermediate test mix and I have some issues to figure out the pre-delay for a rock song. Are there some helpful tips for pre-delay settings? Pre-delay, do you mean the pre-delay in a reverb? Because if that's the case, Raina, then I would suggest that you think about the tempo of the song and think about the not just the tempo, but the kind of the harmonic rhythm, how fast the chords are changing, and how much movement there is with the melody. And then what you want to do with the pre-delay is kind of dial it up until you hear that kind of gunshot effect. If you don't know what I mean by that, kind of like in the movies when somebody fires off a gunshot, you get the that kind of sound. You get the sound and then the reverb kind of a little bit after it. Dial it up until you get that effect, and then back it off until you start to lose that effect, and then you've probably hit more or less the sweet spot with pre-delay on a reverb. And as with any ambient effect, such as a reverb or a delay, I definitely recommend using some EQ after the reverb on your effects channel. Something like using the Pro EQ with a high-pass filter is simple enough. Although sometimes, you may want to brighten up the reverb a little up the top sometimes. I've done that a few times. Nothing wrong with EQing the reverb. Definitely. I mean, the good thing about a high-pass filter on a reverb is that it stops the reverb building up low end that you don't need just reverberating, especially if you have a lot of tracks that you're sending to the same kind of reverb. Like if you've got backing vocals and you're sending those to the same kind of reverb, and let's say you've got 4 backing vocal parts, the low end is just going to build up and build up in that reverb, and it's going to muddy up your mix. So clear out the low end of your reverb, even up as much as 200 to 50 hertz is what I recommend. And on that pre-delay, yeah, just kind of dial it up until you're getting the gunshot effect, and then dial it back until it sounds good. Which is what you're aiming for. You're aiming for it to sound good. You're not aiming, necessarily for perfection. Yeah, and Ray says high and low pass filter on reverbs. Yes. Yeah. If you don't want the reverb to be too bright, then low pass it. Raina says, I want to create a little space for the singer, but I don't want him to bring him behind the guitars. Okay. Well, for as much as you can achieve that with reverb, you could probably achieve the same with EQ and compression. So carve out some space between your guitars that will allow the vocal to pop through, and then you can use compression to achieve, kind of like to help with that. So you could have a I don't know, you can have a faster attack on the guitars maybe, and you can have a slower attack on the vocal, so the vocal can come through a little bit more. You could certainly try that. Using a slow attack can often give the perception that the guitars are a little bit further back, and then the slower attack gives the impression, or the perception rather, that the vocal is much more up front because more transient is going through before being compressed. So you could certainly try that one, Rainer. And we got 14, 15 people in here, which is fantastic considering I posted up in the HST Studio One support group just, I don't know, half an hour before I came on. Peter says, thanks, Rainer. It was me who started writing in German, so it's my bad. That's fine, Peter. It's I'm not trying to be an asshole here. I hope you appreciate that, because I'm not anti other languages at all. It's just a case of I just want to keep the chat clear, clearly understood for everybody, if at all possible. If you're struggling with the English words, you could try Google Translate, but Google Translate is not brilliantly accurate always. So you kind of take that with a pinch of salt. But to be honest, even if you're using Google Translate, we'll get the gist, and that's all we need. And I'm sure the opposite would be true. If it was me attempting to speak German very badly, all you'd need is the gist so that you could be understood. And Bobby Booth is here. Hey, Bobby, good to see you, mate. Thanks for coming. Raina says, okay, I'll try out my idea. My idea was to give him a little reverb and let him stand in front with pre-delay, but I'll try out your idea. Excuse me, I have a very itchy nose. Yeah, cool. Oftentimes I find that that reverb can, for as much as it gives you a sense of space, it can also push your audio back in the mix a little bit. To me, reverb does have a tendency to do that. So perhaps you could try a delay instead, a very subtle delay, the kind of delay which is more felt than heard. And again, you would just dial it in until you can really hear the delay, and then dial it back until it's much more a perception thing. Let's see what we got. Yes, Skip is absolutely right. I'm just trying to get everyone on the same page. Questions are definitely welcome. Absolutely. And Luciano Silver is here. Good to see you, bud. And Verk46 says, since we are making this a tribute to Walter Becker, do you have any insights into how Steely Dan went about making those legendary songs? I have some, but not a great deal. Only what I think has been already discussed by Donald and Walter a few years ago. They had an episode on the classic albums series where they basically covered Asia and how that Asia record was recorded, and some of the pitfalls and things that they had along the way of making that record. And it's really good. It's a really good episode. And they actually got a sort of a brand new Steely Dan in for that TV show, but it featured most of the guys who had been on that record. So you had Bernard Purdy on drums, you had Chuck Rainey on bass, you had Walter, and then you had Greg Philinganes on piano and Fender Rhodes as well. Plus John Harrington, who represents kind of like the modern era of Steely Dan. So I think that was made in the late 90s, that classic albums episode. Man, my nose is so itchy. I don't know why it is, and I don't want to keep on scratching it like that because it's not very polite. So yeah, I have most of what I know about Steely Dan songs is based upon listening to the records obsessively until the grooves wore out, and I'm basically just trying to work out what the heck they're doing with, on the piano, like Peg, for example. Peg is great. It's basically a 12-bar blues, but it's got a unique twist that nobody else, I think, has ever done before with a blues. They took the idea of a church cadence, like a plagal cadence, where you get, where you get that kind of idea of the amen cadence, and then they just gave that a funk groove, and then kind of like went through regular 12-bar blues changes using this plagal cadence, amen cadence kind of idea, which is brilliant. But what was really clever is using a major seventh chord. So it's in the key of G. So it's basically a blues in G. But it's basically going between a C major 7 and then this kind of stack of fourths type thing, which is essentially a G add 2, no third. And that's pretty much the verse. The chorus is a little bit different because it kind of goes through what we would now call a 3-6-2-5 turnaround. So it goes. Here comes the turnaround. So you're back on the G there, then you go into F sharp 7, B minor 7, E7 sharp 9, A minor 11, D11, and then back into the vamp. And they had this little breakdown section before it went back into kind of their little intro vamp. I'll get to the intro vamp in a second. So the little breakdown kind of goes F sharp minor, B minor, E minor, B minor, C major 7. And then you get the intro vamp, which is basically just going down in semitones. So you're on the 1 chord, the G chord, but it's a major 7th. And then you go to this chord here, which is kind of like it's G flat 7 sharp 9 sharp 5, F major 7, same kind of thing going on, E7 sharp 9 sharp 5, E flat major 7, D7 sharp 9 sharp 5, setting up for the verse. And it's a fantastic song because it sounds beautifully simple, and yet there's a strong degree of complexity harmonically, and I think it's that combination of apparent simplicity with harmonic complexity and a ridiculously catchy melody, and Rick Marotta's drum part, Chuck Rainey's nice bass part. I mean, the bass part that Walter gave him was this. And pretty much in the verse, Chuck Rainey played that. But when he got to the chorus, unbeknownst to Donald and Walter, he started doing this little octave slap thing, which is popular, which at the time was becoming popular in disco music. And so he just went into so he went into all of that through the changes. But because there was like a partition set up, nobody noticed that he did it. And that's how that went down, because Donald and Walter had said to Chuck very explicitly, no slapping, because they didn't want to be cliched, and slapping was becoming a little bit of a cliche. But Chuck, being the professional bass player, made a professional judgment that actually slapping would sound better. And Walter and Donald never even knew that he did it. And so that's what ended up on the final cut. So that's the story of Peg. From a sort of arranging point of view, production point of view. And it really goes, I mean, the beauty of the Steely Dan records is it teaches you pretty much everything that people like me and Johnny and Dave and Joe Gilder and Graham Cochran have been saying for years, which is, if you want to have a good master that sounds awesome on any set of speakers that you play it on, you need a good mix. If you want to get a good mix, you need to have a great performance of a great song with great musicianship. And the song needs to be really well arranged and really well written, really well thought through. So if you want to get the good master at the end, invest more time with the song and crafting that song, honing it to perfection. And then the rest of it will start to fall into place and take care of itself. So that's one of the beauties of Steely Dan songs, is that they teach you the best way to go about making a great record. Now, yes, it helps that, you know, they had a great recording engineer in Roger Nichols, and they had a great mixing engineer in Elliot Shiner, and they had a great producer in Gary Katz. But what starts a great Steely Dan record off is Walter and Donald sat in an office space at a piano, honing that song to perfection until they have it. And then when they get into the studio, yeah, by the time, you know, some of the albums from like 1974 onwards, like Pretzel Logic, they were starting to work with session musicians, and the budget was bigger, so they could afford some of these great players, which obviously helps, you know, get great musicians to perform your great song. And, you know, get the mic placement right, get the, as Johnny says over and over again, get the capture right. When you've got that, you've got good musicians, good singers, you've got good mic placement, the level going into your interface is exactly as it should be. Then when it comes to mixing time, it's going to be a piece of cake. The songs will practically mix themselves. And then when it comes to mastering, all you're doing maybe is just, you know, boosting the volume with a limiter, and you don't need to do anything else. So I think that's the lesson for everybody from Steely Dan. Let's go back up to the questions here. Dooley still is here. Good to see you. Peter asks, will you make an appearance in the Home Studio Trainer Super Stream tomorrow? Yes, I am booked to do a songwriting simplified session as part of that. You know, mine and Jonny's Lipsham and Guy stuff. We're going to do a songwriting session, which would be cool. Looking forward to that. Skip says, nicely done. Thanks, Skip. Tim E is here. Good to see you, Tim. He says, sounds good. Raina says, Steely Dan is a mixing role model for me as well. Yeah. awesome musicians create many great mixing solutions. Yes, most definitely. And Pitts Plakner is out of here. He says good night. Good night to you too, my friend. If you catch the rest of this on the replay. Skip says Steely Dan will give you a chord workout and always recorded, mix and master beautifully. A go-to group for auditioning monitors. Yes, absolutely. I mean, when I moved the studio into this room, the first thing I did was I put Asia through my speakers in this room, and then whilst it was playing, I put my acoustic treatment up until this room sounded awesome. I mean, you know, people laugh about cheap acoustic foam and they say, nah, it's not going to do anything. Yeah, it's cheap. It's not going to deal with any frequencies at all. Well, I'll tell you what, in this room, a bit of cheap foam has done the job for me. It's not perfect by any means. You know, there's the shape and size of the room are an issue. You know, it's a small room, so you know acoustic waves don't have enough distance to develop properly, so they are hitting the wall before they're fully developed, and they are bouncing back, and so you get standing waves and room nodes and that kind of stuff. Like this room is in A flat. I'll tell you, if I write a song in A flat, the bass just booms in here. And yes, I have got bass traps in here, but it's just the nature of my room. So there you go. Great for auditioning monitors. Another good record, actually, is Donald Fagen's first solo album, The Nightfly. Again, Gary Katz producing, and Roger Nichols, the recording engineer, Elliot Shiner, the mix engineer. Those mixes are a thing of beauty. They really are. If you want reference tracks for rock music and for jazz music, you can do no worse than Donald Fagen's The Nightfly, because they are beautifully mixed, and you can learn such a lot just from listening to those records and then trying to get your mixes to sound, you know, to have a similar kind of vibe to them. Yeah, Ray says capture and proper gain staging is what it's all about. Yep. Dooley still says my favorite Steely Dan tune is every one of them. Absolutely. Timeless like the Beatles. I could not agree more. Yep. See, I think if there is a pantheon of great songwriters, then I would say Becker and Fagen, Lennon and McCartney, Lieber and Stoller, I would say as well. The Gershwin brothers, they wrote some fantastic, gorgeous songs. But there are, you know, songwriting partnerships. There are some really phenomenal partnerships. But I think of all of them, I think the partnership where you could pretty much not distinguish who did what in what song, it's got to be Becker and Fagen. Because I think Denny Diaz, who was one of the original guitar players in Steely Dan when it first formed in 1971, he said that Walter and Donald are the same dude with two brains. No, hang on, I've got that wrong. He said they are two people with the same brain, to describe Walter and Donald. Yeah, couldn't agree more. Bobby Booth says, have you seen David's videos on analog? I've seen a lot of David's videos, and yes, he goes into analog plugins a lot. I am aware that he has this new fantastic series called Mixing with Analog Style Plugins Made Easy. The title is a little bit of a mouthful, but you know what? The concept is fantastic. And I really can't think of an educator in this industry who knows more about analog plugins than my good friend Dave Vignola. He knows a lot more than I do. I'll tell you that. He and I have been probably mixing for the same kind of amount of time. But we both kind of took very different paths. He kind of very much went down the analog style of plugin mixing, and I kind of went very much the digital way, having both of us started out learning on SSL consoles. And we both kind of went in very, 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 very different directions before coming, right back to where we both started, really. So yeah, I share his philosophy, really, to be honest, with analog plugins. So if you've not been and checked out that new Made Easy product from Dave, go check it out. I believe he has it on sale at the moment for a reduced price. So get in there and go and get it for a reduced price, because it is absolutely flipping well worth it. So who else do we have in here? We have 20 people here. Don't forget Anheuser-Busch. Yes, there's another good one, another good combo. Al Stewart, Ray mentions. Skip says Becker and Fagan gave us as musicians something new and interesting in 1972, a kind of rock jazzy mix that was, as a musician, interesting. Yes, definitely. Steely Dan music is pretty much, in my opinion, musicians' music. It's the kind of music that we listen to. It's the kind of music that we play along to because it challenges us. And it gives us the opportunity to let our musical hair down, so to speak. When I grew up listening to Steely Dan as a kid, in fact, my parents' record collection when I was a kid consisted of the Buddy Rich Band, Charlie Parker, John Coltrane, Steely Dan, Weather Report, Tower of Power, Frank Zappa, and all that kind of stuff. And that's what I grew up listening to. And I listened obsessively to pretty much every record that was in my parents' record collection. Skip says, "Got to throw a shameless plug in, a shameless plug for Khalik. He is offering a free thing for the next few days. Go to his site and take advantage now before it expires." Yes, most definitely. Khalik is a good friend of mine as well, and he is, well, he's just a master in our industry, and you know what? You can do no better than picking his brains. Because he really, really, really knows his stuff. He has worked with some of the best in the business, Michael Jackson, Prince, among many, many others. And Khalik and I have spent a lot of time on Skype talking music and music production, and we have a lot of shared values in common. He's a great guy, and he works very hard at sharing what he has learned in his professional experience with all of us. So definitely, he is a resource that everybody, I think, should tap into. My opinion. Khalik O'Vision is his nickname, and he's fantastic. He's worked very closely with one of the piano players of the modern era that has had a profound impact upon me as a piano player, and that's Herbie Hancock. He would describe Herbie as a friend, as a good friend of his. So being able to talk Herbie with Khalik has been tremendously insightful. So what else we got here? Tower Power 4-play. Yes, I grew up listening to all that kind of stuff. And actually, I would say pretty much in terms of learning how to write songs, the Beatles, Becker and Fagan, and the Gershwin brothers and Irving Berlin probably taught me more about songwriting than anybody else has ever done. Particularly when it comes to using devices like humor, like conjuring up an image, kind of creating kind of like a film noir image in your listener's mind is something that Becker and Fagan masters at. So yeah, I've learned pretty much everything I know about songwriting from them. So if you go and check out my EP, Belonging to Tomorrow, over on Nimbit Music, pretty much everything I've ever learned is distilled into those 5 songs. I am working on a new record, by the way, a new EP. It has unfortunately had to be delayed a little bit. I was hoping that I would be announcing its release in the next couple of weeks, but unfortunately I have just been swamped with all sorts of stuff going on personally, but also I've just had a lot of client work, and which is really great. So if you need mixing, mastering, or if you would like one of your mixes critiqued, drop me an email at johnny@jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk and be happy to help you with that. Absolutely. But so I've had a lot of requests for that already. So there's a little bit of a queue beginning to develop, but that should not hopefully deter you from getting your request in. My mix critiques are not for free. There is a small charge, but it's a very small charge, and I hope that you find, as others have so far, that it's well worth the money. So yeah, so listening to my EP, you'll find pretty much everything I've ever learned about songwriting, arranging, production, mixing, mastering, all distilled into one EP. So yeah, please go check it out if you're interested in it. Peter says, if you're thinking about getting Jonny's EP, I suggest the deluxe version with a video describing thoughts behind each track. Thanks, Peter. Yes. Yeah, if you want to check out how I wrote those songs and what I was thinking about and how I came up with the chord changes and everything else, then yeah, get the deluxe version, and you get all of that included. So as I was saying, yes, I am working on a new EP. It's going to be a little bit different than, in fact, it's going to be quite considerably different than Belonging to Tomorrow. There will be some familiar sounds, but there'll also be a whole bunch of new sounds that I have not done before. There's a lot of new stuff that I'm working on my new songs at the moment. So yes, keep an eye on my website, jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk, and right here on my YouTube channel as well. And I will post some videos as I get further into the EP project, and you'll get to see some of how I go about doing things in the studio for making my EP. And then there'll be some kind of launch that I'll do. I haven't really thought the launch bit through yet, but I'm kind of hoping that I will be at that point before Christmas. That would be ideal. So that's kind of what I'm working towards. So there you go. Deirdre says, I'm using 2 devices. I am cramming. I'm not quite sure what you mean there. Skip says, for you younger folks, ColecoVision appears to be a reference, a game PlayStation long time ago. ColecoVision. All right, okay. That's cool. Thanks for that, Skip. Reynolds says, when I'm ready with the mix, I send it to you to get your thinkings. Yes. Absolutely, Raina. I look forward to it. I look forward to getting to hear the work that you're doing in your studio. And you know what? I'm really, really interested in everybody's mixes, actually. So if you've got mixes that you're working on, by all means, consider sending them to me for a mix critique. And I'd be happy to help you take your mixes to the next level and help you develop and hone your craft. As I say, there is a very small charge for it. It's stupidly cheap, actually. In fact, I've been told that I'm probably charging too little for it. But, you know, my feeling is if I keep the price affordable, then I can give more value. So basically what you get for a mix critique, I charge £20 UK. And it's basically, it's one-to-one. It's very personal. We do it via Skype, and we listen to your mix and we go through, and I give some commentary as we listen through. And the way I do it is I don't listen to your song ahead of our allotted hour. So that basically when we go through it, I'm listening to it for the first time. So that you get my first thoughts rather than, you know, something that I've spent a lot of time thinking about and that kind of thing. So, and we basically talk about your song, we talk about your mix, we talk about your arrangement, we talk about elements that are good, and elements that can be improved and developed to make this song really, really cook. So that's basically what a mix critique with me looks like. So if you're up for that, what is 20 in dollars? That's a good question. I'm not quite sure what the exchange rate is at the moment, but if you go to Google and if you type pound to dollars, and then it should come up with a little conversion thing, and then you should be able to just tap in £20 and it should give you what it is in dollars at today's exchange rate. Thumbs up from Raina. Good. Dooley still says, would you be able to help me work out background vocals using your keyboard someday? Yes, Dooley, we can certainly do that. Drop me an email and we'll get that sorted. Skip says 25.92 is the dollars to pounds. So there you go. Not too bad. Not too bad a price. Peter says, I had a critique section with Jonny and followed his advice note by note, and the other guys in the band loved it. Oh, well, that's great to hear, Peter. Thank you for that. We're definitely getting Jonny's critique on the rest of the tunes for the EP. Awesome. Well, Peter, I'm really glad that that's helped you and helped your band as well. I'm really looking forward to hearing the rest of the tunes for your EP. And hopefully I can help you produce the best music that you guys have produced ever. That's what I would like. That's the kind of input I would like to have into your band and your EP, because the song was good. The song was really good. And there were so many really good elements that it would be really cool if I can help you with the rest of that. Deirdre says, that is cheap. Yes, it is. It might even be a little bit too cheap. But you know what? I think I can provide some high value criticism, positive criticism that will help you with your songs. So Deirdre says, I've got an album. Well, that's great. If you want me to critique more than just the one song, like you want me to critique a whole album, then that's fine. But what we'll do is we'll do it on a song by song basis. Okay, that's what I'm doing with Peter. We've done one song from his EP so far, and when the rest of his songs are ready, then we will do them on a song by song basis, so that Peter has the chance to go and make any changes that he wants and he needs. And that would be the same for anybody else that would do one song in one critique session. But yeah, if you've got a bunch of songs that you want to do, then yeah, we can certainly work that out. We can We can even work out a schedule of when we're going to have a mixed critique session, and then how long you need to make those revisions. Peter says that's what you're doing, Johnny. Thank you. Well, appreciate that, buddy. Deirdre says, yes, sir. You don't have to sir me. I'm just an average, ordinary guy. That said, though, I am an officer in the Territorial Army. Just a second lieutenant, though. Dooley says, how much for the cymbal stand in the corner? You know what? That cymbal stand is a pile of crap. I had a whole bunch of hardware stolen at a gig. At the end of the show, we were just packing stuff down, and I was putting my cymbal stands into the cymbal stand case, and then they were getting taken out the back, out the stage door for loading up, and a whole bunch of my stands got stolen. And that one in the corner there was one of the only ones that got left. But guess what? I think whoever the thief was must have been a drummer, because he only took the middle section of that stand. So he must have had like a section of his stand that maybe had a washer that didn't work anymore. So he basically left me the bottom and left me the top half of the stand. So there you go. Bobby says, right now I only do mixing. Well, that's fine. A mixed critique is all about your mix. That's what I do those for. Dooley, I'm not really sure I understand what you just said. Sorry, buddy. But it's coming up on 10 to midnight. I don't know if my good buddy Johnny has a show tonight or not. I suspect not. I think he was planning on not doing shows at the weekend. But I don't know. I don't know for certain. I would imagine that he is saving himself for the Super Stream. I don't know if that's the official title for it. Super Stream. I like that, though. Excuse me. Which is tomorrow. Peter says, do you have a go-to formula when it comes to chords for the pre-chorus? Depends on the song. And it depends where the song is going, actually. Because it could be major, it could be minor. And sometimes, I might change mode. I might start minor and go major for a chorus, and then I will want to go back to minor. A little bit like My Funny Valentine, which is a beautiful song, one of my favorite songs of all time. I believe it's a Rodgers and Hammerstein song. But it features a middle section that is in the major, but the verse is in the minor. So it really depends. I try to avoid formulas, to be honest, Peter, as much as I can. Particularly when it comes to chord changes, because my approach to chords is quite personal. I don't tend to use the same approach to chords as most other songwriters or most other piano players, to be honest. I try and avoid things like so I tend to avoid standard chord changes, to be honest. For as much as I started out very traditional C, A minor, F, G. Those chords obviously work very well because thousands of pop songs have been written using them. But really, I try and avoid too much of that kind of stuff. So I might do something a little bit different, more like, let's see. So I would do, that's kind of where my songs go harmonically. Skip says, I assume my friend lets his hands and ears find the appropriate chords. You know what? I do. I do. With this new EP that I'm working on at the moment, my harmonic approach is tending to be more about each chord is its own key center. And each chord is there for a sonic reason, not for a functional purpose, if you follow me. So, you know, when you're doing the CA minor FG, or even CA minor D minor G, you know, those follow a particular harmonic function. Each one of those chords serves a particular function, particularly, you know, the 2-5-1, D minor, G7, C. You know, that's how you get from that key to another key, you know. You know, that's how you get from one key to another, is 2-5-1s. You know, jazz music, most 20th century pop music incorporates a lot of 2-5-1s for getting from one key to another. Well, I'm kind of moving away from that for this new EP. And it's going to kind of like, there's not necessarily going to be a key center. There's not necessarily going to be a sense of tonality. It's more going to be, there is a particular tonal color in a chorus, and then there's a different tonal color in the chorus, and that kind of thing. So that's kind of where I'm going. Peter says, if the song is in minor, when going to the pre-chorus, instead of resolving to the 1, I like to go to the flat 1 major 7. Okay, that sounds like that could be pretty cool. Probably a little bit of a surprise to the ears when you get there. I don't know. But that sounds cool. Dooley says, JL makes it all sound good. Well, thank you. You're very kind. I don't practice nearly as much as I should, or as much as actually my conscience tells me I should. But I do practice quite a bit. And my practice routine tends to be, pretty much every day I'll sit down and I will play for about an hour. And I will, in that hour, I will work on technical things like scales. So I'll work on technical things like that for a little portion of that, and then I'll work on improvisation and developing harmonic ideas and harmonic concepts. So I use Band in a Box for working on improvisation. I'll just type in a whole bunch of chord changes, and sometimes I'll challenge myself by putting in weird chord changes deliberately, like Alan Holdsworth style chord changes that will get me kind of get the fingers going. Peter says, I think I need to expand my melody writing outside of the Ionian box. Yeah, try the Aeolian box or the Mixolydian box. Mixolydian. Which is perfect for things like that kind of stuff. Any tips on how you do that? What, expanding your Ionian box? Experiment. All of my harmonic developments and discoveries, there's nothing new about what I do. Experiment, try stuff, see what works and what doesn't. You know, try different sounds out. You know, find out what amount of dissonance you can handle, you can cope with. You know, push it to the extremes. You know. You know, see how much you can take, and then go from there. Is what I'd say, and then dial it back a little bit. It's like I always say, you know, with like I was talking about earlier with the pre-delay. Dial it up so you can really hear it, and then dial it back. So, you know, dial up the dissonance until you really, really hear it, and then dial it back. Soften it out. Be a bit more sparing with it. Rick Beato. Yes, Tim says, check out Rick Beato. Yeah, he's awesome. He's a multi-instrumental musician, composer, songwriter, producer, arranger. He's a very, very good teacher as well. He's got a whole bunch of videos, some of which he's done a brilliant couple of videos on the music of Alan Holdsworth, where I think he went into some of Alan's harmonic concepts, which is really good. He's also done some videos on John Coltrane and Coltrane harmonic theory, and his son has perfect pitch. Yes, as do I. The interesting thing about perfect pitch, here's the thing about that, is that there's this misconception that perfect pitch is something you're either born with or you're not. And so it's kind of like the haves and the have-nots. Not true. Yes, you can be born with it. And no, not everybody is. But if you are not one of those that is born with it, you can train your ear so that it becomes perfect. You can do it. It requires a lot of patience and a lot of practice, but you can do it. And there are, in fact, websites out there that deal with that, that give you test tones and that kind of stuff. Ray says he's lost connection. Have we lost connection? I'm checking the stream just now, and it looks like we're still going. So maybe that's at your end, Ray. Or maybe there's a delay. Can everybody still hear and see me, or have we completely frozen up? If somebody could let me know in the chat, I'd be grateful. Okay, Tim says still on, still live in Sweden. That's good. That is good to hear, guys. I am going to wrap up in 2 minutes time because I need to get going because I have to get my kids to school in the morning. And then I'm going to be starting to release the PreSonus Symphonic Orchestra series that I've been talking about for the last few weeks that I'm going to be doing. So the first one of those is coming out. Just putting the finishing touches to the series, actually, and I'm going to start releasing them drip feed style over the course of the next few weeks. So the first one of those is coming out. If not tomorrow, then certainly the day after you will get it. But probably tomorrow it'll be up. The first one, which will be the overview of the whole product. And then we will go into every instrument, every section of the orchestra, the brass, woodwinds, percussion, and strings. And there's also a choir section. So there will be 5 videos, one on each section of the orchestra. And then when we get to the end of that series, we'll go through the music loops that come with it as well. Okay, so if there is a burning question, I will tackle it now. But if not, we will wrap up. Tim E says good night. Good night to you too, my good friend. And Raina says good night. See you soon. And Ray Foster says thank you. Pete says, Dooley says, Pete, search for mountain or Appalachian dulcimer. You know what? They are awesome. They make a wonderful sound. And I'm really quite surprised that there hasn't been a sample brought into Presence XT in Studio One. That would be awesome. Deirdre says, I was playing with it last night. You mean the PreSonus Symphonic Orchestra? I'm hoping that's what you mean. Yes, so was I actually. I was having a good play with it as well, so that I make sure that this series is as thorough as I can get to. Skip says, I'll be moving those videos on PreSonus Symphonic Orchestra with Johnny's permission to the video section on the PreSonus forums. That'd be awesome, Skip. You can either take them one at a time as I post them, Skip, or you can wait until the series is done and maybe post the whole series. I leave that to your discretion. But yeah, it'd be really great to get those up into the PreSonus forums so that people really get to check out this product. Because it is very cool. Very, very cool. And it's, you know what, it's really good value for money. For the price you pay for it, you get a really, really good, high quality, professional level orchestral sound pack. Really, really good. It's not maybe as full featured as something like the Vienna Symphony Orchestra or the East West Orchestra, but they are monster massive things with a bajillion articulations, and it's got like the Vienna one's got a built-in mixer and all sorts. But don't think, therefore, that the PreSonus Symphonic Orchestra is a second class or even a third class product, because it isn't. It isn't. I tell you, I've played it alongside the East West Symphonic Orchestra. I don't actually have that on this computer, but a friend of mine has both on his computer in his studio. So I went to his studio and we played them one against the other. And you know what? The PreSonus Symphonic Orchestra comes out pretty good in comparison. Our Guitar 78, I'm glad you are here, but we are just wrapping up, my friend. I'm really sorry about that. He says, I'm so anxious to start hearing the reviews on the PreSonus Quantum. Well, you know what? On the subject of the PreSonus Quantum, there has been a shootout with another interface of a similar kind of type, and it favors extremely well. I think they did a blind test, and it comes out extremely well. Very impressive piece of kit. I wish I had one. But then again, I have a PC which doesn't have Thunderbolt, so it would just look pretty on my desk, which is no good. Woodbeast, you are here, my friend. Good to see you. And I'm so sorry because we are just finishing up. It's just after midnight, and I don't know if Johnny Give is doing a show tonight or not. I suspect not, because he's doing the super stream tomorrow. So I guess because it's a 6-hour thing, he'll be wanting to save his voice. Absolutely. That guy needs to rest his voice for sure. Dooley says, after party when Jonny Lipsham goes to bed. You know what? You guys should definitely have a little party on the chat feed. Absolutely. And then I will catch up with all of your comments when I'm next on. Lost Lure, you're here as well. You know what, guys? I'm really sorry because this was kind of unannounced, unplanned. You'll see from the title, those of you that are just joining here, that it's called the Walter Becker edition. If you have not heard the news, then the news is that Walter Becker, guitarist and co-songwriter with Donald Fagen, making Steely Dan, died this morning, quite suddenly, recovering from some surgery that he had a few weeks ago. So he'd missed a string of Steely Dan shows because of recovering from surgery, and as unfortunately he has died, I presume from complications, but there's been no official statement as yet as to what's happened. So that, I'm sure, will possibly come out in the course of the next week or two. If you go to Donald Fagen's Facebook page, there is some personal statement released by him, and a couple of other personal things released by him and his wife, Libby. So yes, Dooley says, yes, I didn't know that. Yeah, it's really sad. So unfortunately for all of us Steely Dan fans, it's pretty unlikely now that there will be another Steely Dan record. I would think certainly a record that's got new material on it. But from what Donald said in his statement, he said that he intends to continue Steely Dan, and he intends to continue doing shows with the remaining band, so that he can keep the music that he and Walter created over a 45-year period, keep all of that body of work alive and in the public domain and in people's ears. So yeah, it's a sad day for musicians. It's a sad day for Steely Dan fans. And it's a very sad day for Donald and Libby Fagen and Walter's family, his kids, Sa and Kawai. I'm sure are devastated to lose their dad. So for those of you that pray, please pray for those affected by Walter's death, his family, and Donald and the band members of Steely Dan, and the crew, and Becker and Fagen's management, particularly Craig Fruin, who has been their manager for 40 years. So he would have known them extremely well. So yeah, pray for them if you pray. If you don't pray, then certainly think the very best of those people. That'd be cool. Skip says, good show tonight, Johnny. I know it's a late night thing for you to do, but I'll always be here. You know what, Skip? I really, 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 I'm going to say this publicly, all right? For the 9 people that are still here, I really appreciate you, mate. And I really value all that you do for guys like me and Johnny and Dave Vignola and other content creators that do Studio One and Presonus-based stuff. We really value your support and your encouragement and your work behind the scenes for all of us. So thank you very much, mate. And he says, I'm having a Steely Dan listening party later tonight. Yeah, well, you know what? When I go to bed, I'm going to put my headphones on, and I'm going to be listening to the Citizen Steely Dan box set through the night. Steely Dan was one of a kind band. You're not kidding. Unique. But the band will live on, even though Walter sadly is no longer with us. Donald and the boys and the girls, the backing vocal girls, will keep the thing going, and I'm sure that that would be something that Walter would have wanted. So folks, it is 10 past midnight. I've had a very, very busy weekend, and as I say, I wasn't planning on doing a live stream, but as the more I've thought about it through the course of today and the news of Walter's death, I've thought that it's important that that I do something. So yeah, Dooley says, I'm sad as hell. Yes, I think we all are. And it's going to take some getting over. Woodby says we should all play Reeling in the Years. Yeah, we should. I'm trying to remember how it goes, actually. Your everlasting summer, you can see it fading fast. See a crap piece of something that you think is gonna last. When you wonder you know time, and if you held it in your hands, the things you think are precious I can't understand. Are you reeling in the years, storing away the time? Are you gathering up the tears? Have you had enough of mine? There you go. Little edited version, because I'm sure I will get a copyright strike for that on YouTube. So, all right, folks, I will bid you a very good night, and I will see you all next time. Bye for now.